Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'd love to introduce April Chavez. She's the ultimate modern-day superwoman, from her past role as a deputy sheriff to her current journey of helping people achieve total wellness through the wellness-driven life show. She's changing lives and making an impact one microphone at a time. Despite living with lupus her entire life, she lives full force, hitting the trails and nature hikes, and reigning on the dance floor with her husband, Manlee Chavez. April indeed shows us what it means to live your best life. Welcome, April, to A Little Less Fear podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel so blessed and honored to be here with you today. You and I align in so many different regards.
We absolutely do. And for people tuning in for the first time, April has an incredible show. And I had the honor of being on her show first before her being on my show. And I loved it. I love April's energy. I love your energy. I'm talking in third person, but here you are in front of me. I love your energy, and we're definitely in alignment. And let's start off here. So this is a personal growth, motivational podcast, and I'd love to know your journey. What brought you to where you are currently today?
Dr. Martinez, so many things, as many people would say, right? It has been a long journey, and it's going to be an even longer one ahead, which is an exciting thing, because I think that when we start thinking of our future as something that we can be excited about, it makes it so much more powerful.
Yes.
So my journey really begins from childhood. Let's start there. I was diagnosed at 15 with lupus, had symptoms since birth. So my childhood wasn't exactly the greatest when it came to sports that I enjoyed and I loved, that I had to stop because of the disease that was coming up, going to many hospitals and doctors, and just kind of not having the average childhood. And as a teenager, when my mom took me to a support group, once we found out what I had, the disease, and, she wanted to educate me, give me all the books so I knew what was happening to my body. So she put me in a support group, and lupus at the time, and probably still now, but I haven't done a lot of research, and I'll tell you why. But I was the youngest person there. So the people in the group were primarily women. They were, mid 30s and up, and I felt no relation. And I also felt like people were really using their disease to feel like life was ending. And as a teenager, I did not want that. I was like, what are you talking about? I have an entire life to live. And so it started right off the bat with me, despite the setbacks and feeling not so 100%, sometimes, but it's always been a really ebb and flow. So there's been days when I feel great, days when I feel awful, but I felt that there was so much more to live, and I didn't want that disease to define me. Fast forward a little bit more. My mom was told by my rheumatologist at the time that I wouldn't make it to C30, and that I wouldn't be able to bear children. So at 18 years old, I was like, what the heck am I taking this birth control for? And so I stopped going off the birth control because I was a sexually active 18-year-old. And what happened? I got pregnant. And between me and my other girlfriends, I was the one who was like, I'm never having children. I knew that I couldn't anyway, or what they said, but I really didn't want that in my life. I had these dreams and aspirations to go to college, to become a forensic entomologist, and to really pursue career. And my whole life totally flipped and totally changed when I had my baby girl. And I thought that during the pregnancy, I would just miscarry. So of course, you could say, well, that young, you could have different choices, adoption, whatever choice, right? Well, I just
And you
didn't
thought
know
this,
what was
April,
going to
because of
happen.
what the doctors told you, correct? Because they,
Yeah. The rheumatologist said I wouldn't make it to C30,
yeah,
wouldn't be able to have children. So there was all these things that were told, but didn't really take fruition.
wasn't
And so
matching up.
it wasn't matching up. And because of that, I really started looking into my own health and wellness in a totally different regard.
Excellent. And so you started to look at it at a different regard. I mean, to me, that sounds positive, correct? You started actually
Yeah.
taking charge at that moment. Could you go a little deeper into that? How did you start taking charge into that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, honestly, as a mother, a new mother, is really when I started taking my health the most seriously. I started looking into what I was eating. And so it started definitely with diet. My journey of learning, when you talk about especially in this world where there's so much to learn, right?
Yeah,
About our overall well-being. There's so many different layers and so many different aspects. That's why I interview many different people, because I like to say that wellness is under this massive umbrella. There's
sure is.
all of these different buckets that
Yeah.
really you can hit. It started there because as a mom, I had this fear that I would be really sick or ill and I wouldn't be able to care for myself, and my children would have to do that. And I was like, I'm damned if that's going to happen. I don't want that to happen. I do not want that to be my reality.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to be as healthy as possible too. So I wanted to feed them the right things. I wanted them to grow up healthy and vibrant, even if I couldn't be 100% all the time. I also had a good friend growing up whose mom had MS. And so I witnessed what that was like, where the children really catered to her. And it was not a great experience. And she ended up passing away. But again, I just didn't want to be that for my kids. I didn't want to be that parent. I didn't want to be sickly. I didn't want to be that example to them.
And so your new wellness journey began with changing your eating habits.
Yeah, it totally did. I remember early on, I learned about, I can't remember the gentleman's name whose book I read, and he might have written Take the Stairs too, but he talked about his diet and Ezekiel bread. So that was really when I started learning about grains and what types of things. And what's interesting about that, Dr. Martinez, is when I was real little and when my mom was pregnant with me, um, I grew up on a wheat farm. And so my parents were farmers. And so if you can imagine on a wheat farm, being farmers, working hard, it's an incredible position to be in, because you get all of the benefits of working out and feeling really good about the things that you're doing, and working out on the land, and it's beautiful. But there's also a lot of chemicals and a lot of pesticides. And so as I was learning about diet and food and nutrition, those sort of things started coming into play. And so I started questioning, well, what is it about my past and my history that I could have been in contact with externally, right? Because
Wow.
when we talk about like our overall well-being, it's what are we putting in, on, and around our body?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you started to put that together. There was pesticides that were being used. You were exposed to this your whole
Yeah.
life as a child,
Yeah.
and that causes a domino of effects,
Yeah.
inflammation throughout
Yeah.
your entire body. And
Yeah.
so you started to put it all together.
Yeah. Well, definitely you start to question possibilities of why scenarios, like, is it really something that comes with us on a, through genes, or is it something that was an environmental factor, or was it the Velveeta and government cheese that I grew up on?
Maybe.
Like, what could it be? Is it a combination of all of it?
Mhm.
But I tell you what, throughout my life, I really came to one of the biggest, most profound things, and the biggest cause of flare up during my life. And I told you it's been this ebb and flow
Right.
throughout life, right? But during my flare ups, or about 6 months afterwards, when I had a flare up, it was all stemmed from a major life event, very stressful times in my life. So I like to say that stress is the number one killer,
It really
but
is.
it is, and all stress is tied to emotion. So
Yes.
when we start to learn that emotion is what causes that as stress and traumatic events, and when we learn how to really understand that and to acknowledge it when it happens and kind of bite it in the butt, it's manageable, and we start to improve, and we start to learn, and we grow.
So when you started having these flare-ups and you started making the correlation of emotions with flare-ups, what was a biggest flare-up that you had that you were able to pinpoint the emotion that caused it to trigger?
Oh, it's always involving my heart. Uh, my heart. I am I don't know, I guess as I get older, I would probably consider myself like a empath, like I'm very empathetic to
Yeah.
people, and I care a lot. So I probably take things way too personally when it comes to issues surrounding the heart. And so it's always been things like that, like my divorce, feeling taken advantage of in career, my children. Oh man, when it comes to my kids, I tell you what, that's when I experience the biggest flare up, is when it's something that's involving my children.
Sure, I can imagine. Yeah, for those tuning in for the first time, I have a genetic disease I was born with too. It's called Muckle-Wells syndrome, and I used to same exact thing with me. Anytime there's an emotional trigger or an emotional stress, it triggers a flare up, and it can get pretty bad. And so I also had to learn the tools, just like you did. Is it what I'm eating? Is it what I'm thinking? Or it's what I'm feeling? But almost always, it's what I'm feeling. And because you can really, if you're flying high and you're feeling excellent, you're feeling well and everything else is going well, you can probably have that fast food fat burger and be okay. But if your emotions are running, or you're running low on fuel, and emotionally you're not feeling well and you're highly stressed, and then you eat bad, that's what it's gonna be a major
Yeah,
domino effect from there. So
totally.
yeah.
Oh, I like to liken it to something Dr. Joe Dispenza said, and I adore his teachings and his
Yeah.
work. Um, and something that he said, he's like, you know what? I eat pasta and I drink wine. And I'm not saying this to the audience to just go eat whatever the heck you want,
Right,
because
right, right, right.
our diet matters, right? But
Sure.
truly, the key here is, how are we thinking, and how are we feeling? Because if our thoughts and our emotions are not in a healthy place and not in a
Right.
positive vibration, what you eat is gonna cause havoc. And if they're in a high vibration, and you're doing great with your thoughts and emotions, and you're on this high vibe, then it doesn't really matter. Like, think of the human being as, we are one of the most resilient creatures on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Think historically what we have gone through, what we've put our bodies through, and I hate this, but it's coming to mind. But think of the Holocaust, right?
Right.
What can a human being go through physically, right? It's amazing. We are so resilient. And so when you consider that, then we can truly be put through the ringer,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And those are the sorts of things that really empower me, and really truly hone in on that belief that we are more powerful than you ever could imagine.
We absolutely are. We absolutely are. And a lot of people, they're not able to see this, and that's because they're clouded with so many other emotions that are not allowing them to see their full potential, their full power, their full light. And when you're able to finally tap into that, you can ride the wave of goodness and wellness and be driven by wellness. I love it.
And
So
it's
then,
a constant thing, just so everybody knows. This is
oh,
not a one and done.
oh no, it's never one and done. It's definitely a constant, just like the ocean waves coming in
Yeah,
back and
I
forth.
like that.
Yeah, it's and there's actually a lot of beauty in the ebb and flow of life. So it's important to really take both of those elements and see the beauty in the highs and the lows. Because without the high, you can't have the low, and without the low, you can't have the high.
100%.
So April, after you started to take control of your health and you started to change your diet and your habits, what was next in your wellness path?
Oh gosh. Well, it's just always a journey. I'm always learning more. I learn more from my guests. For instance, meditation is a big thing. My biggest lesson Dr. Martinez, honestly has been to slow down and to calm myself down. That has been one of the most difficult lessons for me throughout my life, is to just calm down and to sit with myself and to listen to my body. And, even though I had a little bit of an awareness around this, because I've been on this health journey for my whole life. I've wanted to understand all of these things, but it didn't really hit hard until I had an event with my kids, like I said, and it was matters of the heart. And I didn't really know how to be or to show up or to move forward. I was considering taking my life. Like, I was at a very, very low point. And the way that I came out through that was I started learning meditation. I said that I really enjoy Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and I came into his work. I read his books. I started practicing and using his meditations. I went to a couple of his events, and that was when I really learned how to just sit with myself and to be calm, to lower my heart rate. But it really began before that, when I was in law enforcement and I started learning how to lower the heart rate. But when we fast forward a little bit, this is why I say that this is a constant thing, because no matter what, on our journey through life, we're going to have things that come up that are very, very difficult and very challenging. And even though a lot of the tools, unless you're doing those consistently, I like to say that we rise to the level of our training, right? We don't rise to the level of our courage. We fall to the level of our training, something like that. Anyway, point is that when we are consistent with things. So I learned that in law enforcement because, we had to train consistently with our firearms and how we responded with threat. And you don't really know how you're going to respond until it happens, right? You have this thing happens and you have to hold somebody at gunpoint and you have this major stuff going on, and you don't know how you're going to respond, but oftentimes you rise to the level of your training. So even though I knew about these things, I wasn't really consistent with honing in on my breath work and lowering my heart rate. So when this big event happened, I was a mess, man. I was just a mess.
Sure.
And so when I started doing the work, and that was when things changed. That was when my heart settled down and I was able to open up and come to a calmer state. And, when we're able to do that, and we're able to lower that heart rate. I mean, that's the thing, right? We're all living in these high anxiety states. It's just the way that our busy world is. And so when we understand how to regulate that, we can really much better respond in the world.
Absolutely. Otherwise, you're just going on your flight and fight response, and your high cortisol stress hormone levels are through the roof.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're clouded by stress. You're clouded by hormones that are not even regulated. And at that point, how can you even be your authentic self at that point? You're not even yourself.
Yeah.
It's like you're in a rage.
No, yeah, you definitely can't be authentic and be yourself because you're not living as your true self.
April, you said something earlier. What you learned was to slow down, sit with yourself, and listen to your body. What does listening to your body sound like? What does it feel like? What is it to you?
Oh, well, um, it's a number of different things, but I think you really feel like where the emotion is trapped, if I can say it that way. We're energetic beings and we have all of these energy centers throughout our body. And I think that when you actually sit with yourself and you really get to that place of deep listening, you start to feel where things are moved. I had a really great guest on my show. He's written a number of books on feelings. So he's a subject matter expert on
I
feelings.
love
And
that.
he talks about, asking yourself, being intentional about the question of like, where is the emotion, where is the feeling, and asking and questioning yourself where it's located, and then going a little deeper into questioning that. But it's you can literally feel where it is in your body when you start to just sit there with it.
I had a similar experience when I went through a breakup. I felt, like the stress and the anxiety through my body. And when I sat and meditated and I asked myself that question, where is this stress? Where is this pain stored? I actually felt an empty feeling in my gut. And at that point, I thought I was going to feel it in my chest where my heart's at. But when I realized, and I meditate every day. What I do a chakra alignment meditation. I realized that it was in my gut because that's where my power center is at, and I realized that I was giving my power away to these emotions that were not really defining like who I am and what my purpose is in life. And then I was able to breathe into it and release the stress and the anxiety that was in my gut.
Yeah.
And making my heart lighter at that point. And yeah, I still struggled back and forth, but when I was able to recognize where that empty deep feeling was, I was able to breathe into it and let it go. And I think it's really amazing to be able to ask your body with intention, where are you being stored at right now? Because if we don't ask that, disease will start to form, inflammation will start to form in that area.
Yeah. 100%. And what you said that's really key is settling on that area and being intentional on just loving that area. I mean, there's so much science to back this. And when we are intentional about that location and just filling it with love, and it's strange at first when you're not familiar with that. I mean, none of us are, right? We're not taught this in school. Like our parents aren't teaching this. And so
Right.
when we come into it, it's super foreign and we're like, what the heck is this voodoo, whatever? I just don't know about this. And especially for me, I think I'm kind of a unique human being because I stem from this law enforcement real background where you don't really consider things like this. Like you're more set in this reality point of view where you're just like, give me the the stats and give me the reality here. And
Yeah, like hard
so
facts.
yeah, you don't go into the heart and the soul and all of those things
Right.
because you're just a little more you just don't consider that. You're dealing with so much that is really here in this physical realm, and you get caught up in that. But I learned a lot about the spiritual world. I tell you what, when I was in law enforcement, you see some crazy stuff. But yeah, you just I think I'm kind of a unique, interesting person because I like to kind of dab into everything. I have a very open-minded perspective, and I get excited about learning more. And I think that's maybe also my investigative nature too.
Sure. And it being part of your investigative nature made you investigate further into meditation and where a lot of your stuff was stored, which ultimately brought you to where you're at right now. Let's talk about law enforcement. I'm fascinated. You were a deputy sheriff.
Yeah.
For how long?
Well, it's kind of like in the terms of dog years.
Okay.
So I don't really go into the length of time because, especially the location that I was at, I was in the mountains. So as a deputy sheriff in this massive county where you're covering this huge amount of land. It took 2 hours to cross from one side of the county to the other. So if you can imagine that, like that's a wide range
That
here.
is a very wide
And
range.
per shift, there was 2 deputies per side. So there was 4 of us. So if you can also imagine, it was very, very rare that I had backup. Because if it takes 2 hours to cross the entire county, if you
Wow.
have an emergency response, it takes you 20 minutes to get there and your backup is an hour out, you're alone. And so there were many, many times in many cases where I was alone. So I did a lot of stuff on my own. The scariest thing I ever did, and I have 2, but the one where I was most frightened was I conducted a house search on my own. And so I had this call and dispatch was telling me this information about how the perpetrator, this husband, was he just got released or escaped or something crazy where he was loose and he wasn't supposed to be. And he was after his wife and he was going to kill her. And so I thought that for sure I was going to meet this guy who was on this rampant rage of murder. And so when I was there and I was alone, my backup was way out. So, I had to get in there because the threat was that high. I'll call that an exigent circumstance. And so I entered, I have my gun out because when you're doing a house search, you have to have your gun out and you're searching. And there was this dog that kept barking, and he kept barking and running back and forth and back and forth. And I thought, the dog is telling me that like there's somebody in here also, just not only me. So it was terrifying. Later did I learn that dispatch gave me incorrect information and the guy was actually already in jail. So,
Oh my goodness.
miscommunication. I mean, I tell you, I had so many lessons of the importance of communication, life and death communication, right? You have to have the right knowledge and you have to be able to give that to people. Now, the other one was I did a lot of overnight shifts. And so I stopped this vehicle. I'm actually on my way back home, end of shift. It's like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I can't recall. And I see this vehicle, they're kind of swerving and these are mountain roads, the mountain highway, right? So there's not a lot of room to pass. And it's dark, windy roads. So I see this vehicle and I can see that there's quite a few people inside this vehicle. And I pulled him over for one reason or another. I can't recall now. And I called it in, and this is full of a bunch of felons, gangbangers outside of Denver. And excuse me. So this is now a felony stop. Well, a felony stop is where you hold the vehicle at gunpoint and you walk every person out of the car. You have them put their
And you're the
hands
only
outside the window.
And you're by yourself at this point.
By myself. So the thing about it too is, you're so short in staff, and you have your command staff down the mountain by, I don't know, 8 p.m. or earlier. You have state patrol down the mountain by 10 p.m. So yeah, you're on your own. You don't have anybody there. So, and then they have to wake up other deputies or other command staff to come assist if you're really out of luck. Sorry. So there was 5 people in this vehicle that I had to walk out and have them back up with their hands up and put cuffs on them at gunpoint individually. And so I tell you what, though, that experience was very interesting because those kids were so frightened and they were the nicest bunch of kids, but I performed my job and effectively and I did it all on my own.
Going back to, thanks for that. I was able to see that clearly, vividly in my mind, but I'm also wondering how, when back in our earlier conversation, we are talking about cortisol levels and stress hormones going up, skyrocket.
Yeah.
How did you come down from that stress when you were in those situations?
Oh gosh, one of my biggest influencers, and I actually got to interview him on my show, and he wrote the book on combat, and it's Colonel Dave Grossman. And he's, anybody in the law enforcement and many people in military, they know who he is because he is just this mastermind of how do you perform under stress. So he was the first person that I really learned about breathing techniques when you're under that immense amount of life-threatening stress. And there's nothing like that when you're holding others at gunpoint or you're having it, gunpoint at you. And you have to learn how to regulate that, or else you're going to fall apart because
Right.
you have to step up to the game in order to respond for yourself and for the protection of others. It's not just
True.
you.
Right.
And it's not very many people that can really perform the job. It's not an easy job. And I think what was unique about me is that because I had this autoimmune disease, because I had already had these life-threatening things, I never knew when it was going to be my time. There was a lot of instances when I was a kid where I came very, very close to death. And I think that I just showed up better because of that, like more brave because of that,
That
like
makes
was
sense.
able to respond in a better manner than a lot of people.
That definitely makes sense. I can definitely see that. And I can definitely understand that when you're constantly fighting for your life already, and
Yeah.
now you're older and you're in this high stressful situation. You've already been there, done that in a different situation, but your
Yeah.
body already knows how to handle that type of stress in its own way. You adapted that way already.
Yeah. And, I also really, I like to tell myself that, the most dangerous thing that I do every day, that everybody does every day, is get inside a vehicle. It's the most dangerous thing you do every day. As far as the stats on how people die, it's, automobile wrecks. And so I kind of just told myself that too. And, there's also this sense of, do I want to die sick, or do I want to die making an impact and making a difference?
Yes.
So that kind of is always in the back of my mind as well.
And you are making an impact.
Yeah, in a
A
different way,
wellness
for sure.
driven, show impact. I love it. So
Yeah,
why? I'm assuming you're no longer a deputy, correct?
that's correct. This is the Wellness Driven Life Show is my gig, man. I love it too. I show up in the world a different way. Some of the things that I learned while in law enforcement. I mean, you go into that career field because you do want to make a difference. You think that you're going to save the day on so many different levels. And what I experienced, because there's most of the cases are DVs, domestic violence, and you realize when you are giving people all of the resources and all of the things to improve their life and make changes that they need in order to live safely and get out of situations that they shouldn't be in, uh oftentimes, more often than not, they don't make the choice to better themselves and to get out of it, even though they have those resources handed to them. And it always blew my mind. Like I couldn't believe it. I didn't understand it. And so I started to realize, and through my own personal relationships, that I can't change anyone.
Right.
That the only person that I can change is myself.
Right.
And so when I went into entrepreneurship after a few different endeavors, I've wore many different hats, law enforcement being one, corporate world being another. But when I stepped into entrepreneurship, I knew that I wanted it to be in the health and wellness arena. And I wasn't quite sure about coaching. It wasn't necessarily the best taste in my mouth. But when I considered being a host and interviewing people and having a talk show, it just like lit me up, because I wanted to push out information, because everybody has the choice to make the decision to improve themselves. But it's also where, when we hear the stories from others,
Right.
it gives us that power and that excitement to, oh my gosh, me too. And if they can do it,
Yeah.
so can I. And it just empowers you to just improve, it's
That's why
inspiring.
I love it. That's why I love podcasting. I love pushing out the information, motivating people, and people choose to listen and get what they get from the person, the guest, the person that's in front of me.
Yeah.
And it's really it motivates me, and I know that it motivates others, and it even motivates the guests. It's just one big motivational hug.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes the biggest impact. I feel that I make more of an impact now than I ever could have boots on the ground.
Wow, that's
And
beautiful.
that is not saying that that position is not valuable. because it is. And everybody's on their own journey in their own timing. That was my timing for that
Yeah,
then. And I showed up the best that I could.
I'm sure.
And now this is the time to do something different and impact differently. But you know what? Tomorrow might be different.
Yeah.
Or a couple of years from now, I might be impacting even differently,
Hmm.
So life is change. That's the only
Oh
constant.
yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And so when you left law enforcement, what did you do next after that?
Well, immediately after that, I actually, which is really humorous, I became an office manager assistant for a mortgage company. And when I say I wore many hats, I
Yeah.
mean I've worn many hats. I've kind of delved into all sorts of different things, but the beautiful thing about that is it really has given me so many different examples and understandings and experience
Yes,
from all of those different walks of life, right?
definitely.
But the interesting thing about that and why it's humorous is because coming directly from this position of power, let's say, you're in an authoritative position, and
Right.
then I am talking to customers and I'm on the phone, and they actually told me, April, we're not going to have you answer phones anymore because you're scaring the customers.
Oh,
It's taken me a long time to step back into my femininity, I
yeah.
guess. And it's just humorous to me because as I've seen this journey, you're really conditioned into one thing and how to show up. And it's a safety thing when it comes to law enforcement. That's why a lot of people think that officers are total jerks because they're conditioned to show up that way
Right.
in order to be on high alert, to
Right.
protect themselves and everybody else around them. And
Sure.
so but also there's few and far between those incredible officers that are out there that have really learned the art of like verbal judo, right? And it's all in how you can show up with people, and you start to learn how to read people's body language and their faces and their gestures and the tone of voice, and really being able to get a lot of information out of people in that way.
I love it. And so then how did you get motivated to create your own show?
How did well,
What
gosh,
motivated you?
motivated.
How did it start?
Well, you know what? Let's go here because I could answer that in so many different ways, Dr. Martinez. But the answer that I want to give you is that I don't do it as consistently as I'd like, but I was journaling for a time period. And I found myself journaling that I wanted so badly a reason to want to get up in the morning, because I was at a point in my life where I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I was. I was in the middle of this identity crisis, and I felt like with my past and my history, if I wasn't going to go back into law enforcement, then what the heck was I going to do? I didn't have a ton of schooling to back me up, so I wasn't very appealing to a lot of different positions, even though I felt like my skill level was way above what I was able to grasp onto as far as the corporate or the career arena. And I was really, really down about it. So I found myself writing in my journal that I just wanted a reason to get up out of bed in the morning. I wanted a reason to feel good about my
Sure.
day and
Yeah.
how I approached life. And when I had a good friend of mine who asked me, she said, April, would you like to learn how to do your own talk show? And I said, yes, yes, I do. Yeah, I do. And it just, everything started falling into place. I learned how to do it. She mentored me through this process. She's been doing it for, almost 30 years. She had a physical brick and mortar location where she conducted interviews and did her own talk show. And then when COVID hit, she went into the virtual arena like we're doing now. But she really gave me the love and support and encouragement that I could do this, because it's terrifying in the beginning. You know, when you put yourself out there and you're vulnerable, you're going on camera, and I go live
Yeah.
because I'm a crazy lady. But you know, there's this sense of vulnerability and this unsureness, and you're very nervous about that.
Yeah.
It's a frightening thing if it's not something that you're used to doing.
Right.
But she just gave me so much encouragement, and she was like, you got this. And then we'd do a couple mock interviews back and forth. And then afterwards I'd be like, oh my gosh, that was so easy. I can do this. I can do this. And so in the beginning, I had this vision of, you know, I don't want to go 5 days a week. I was terrified of that. I was like, how could I possibly do that? Or, you know, I don't want to put myself out there that much. And then I realized, no, I want to do that. I want to be able to show up that much and gain the traction that I truly want to gain.
Right.
And then I chose to go live because honestly, I didn't know how to edit, and I didn't want to deal with that.
Right.
So I knew too, if I was going to go 5 days a week, if I had to edit that content, I would
man.
never
Yeah.
keep up. I mean,
Right.
it would just hold me back. So yeah, I chose to really be raw and authentic and real and live. And if I messed up, which there's gonna be mess ups and you're gonna trip up, but
Sure.
just roll with it.
But April, so your friend had asked you if you wanted your own show. What made her ask you this question? Did you show interest? Did you ask questions, or did she just come up with the idea? Ever thought about this? What
Well,
made her ask you this?
yeah, it's what she does. She does train people for a living, you know, outside of her own show, but that's another thing that she does and she offers to community.
Uh,
But she knew a lot of my circumstances. We were close. And so I really just shared with her my frustrations and the things that were happening in life, and I think that it just inspired her to try to help and try to give back to me, try to give a sense of life back to me. And again, once it started coming into play, everything started to just,
fall into
the
place.
synchronicities of it were
Yes.
unreal. So I knew that it was the right thing to do. That you know, it's like, it's interesting because when you finally find the thing that is it, like the thing that you feel like you were born to be and do, that's how I feel the show is, or interviewing people. It comes naturally.
I love it, and I feel it. Can you talk a little bit more about the synchronicities?
Sure. So what I mean by synchronicities is the way that my show is run, the help that we have, it's 2.5. And what I mean by 2.5 is it's me, my husband, and the cat. And the cat is not very helpful. So my husband also has a full-time job. You know, we have to put food on the table somehow, right?
Yeah.
And because when you walk into something like this, it's like an all or nothing. You have to make a lot of sacrifices, especially when it comes to the financial arena, because it costs an immense amount to make a production, and there's very little return in the beginning.
That's for sure.
So it's you have to weigh that out and know that there's going to be a lot of sacrifice to be had. And so
Yeah.
it's not been easy. But what I will say about synchronicities is, when I first told my husband that this is what I wanted to do, he was kind of like, okay, yeah, I'll support you.
That's beautiful.
And really inside his head was like, oh, what are you doing?
Oh.
Like, what are we doing? And you know, when you consider creating this production, you're like, okay, well, we want an intro and an outro, and we want to show it professionally. And oh my gosh, the anxiety about, you know, having your own music, you know, the sounds that you need to have, and worrying about all of the you know, taking somebody's product and then getting sued for it. So
Yeah,
like there's
copyright
all of those
laws. There's
things.
so much to look into.
So much. It's a fire hose to the face. And so when all of these things are coming, you're like, oh geez, I got to address this and I got to address this. And we're like, well, what can we do for the sound and for this intro and outro music? And we heard on the radio, we're driving in the car, we hear Gods of War by Def Leppard come on the in the stereo. And I love Def Leppard. I love Gods of War. So we're like, we want something like this. This is cool. Like, I want the show to be like that. And of course it's not. It's not that intense. But we started thinking about, well, what are our connections? And who do we reach out to? Well, Manlee and I, we go out dancing a lot. And our first love really bloomed through dancing and going out to listen to live bands. And we always went and visited this particular local band called Guild of Ages. And they're a local Denver band. So if you happen to be in Colorado, you've got to go check them out. GOA, Guild of Ages. And we reached out to the drummer, Steve, who's a very good friend of mine and of ours. And we're like, Steve, we would love to know if the band would maybe consider making some music for us.
I love that.
So, and of course we didn't have any money to throw at this. We're like, just, would you help? What do you think? And the band ultimately came to the consensus of no, not at this time. Because they wanted, some monetary backing with that. And we just weren't able to do that. So Steve, amazing human being. He was like, I've got a lot of stuff that I've created. Why don't you check it out? If you like anything, you can use it. And if not, I'll make you something. And it was just this beautiful, passionate coming up of like where he believed in us enough that he was offering his help that way. And we found something that we absolutely loved. And then we created, the visuals to go with that. And that's what creates our intro and our outro. But that's just an example of somebody believing in it. Yeah. They see the vision. They see the dream. And they're like, yes, I want to help. The other examples are through the guests, all of the guests we've had on the show. A lot of them are very high end, and it's organically, we organically ask, right? It's Manlee and I who are really reaching out to every single person, just us. We don't hire any agency outside of ourselves. And we just keep asking. And that's the magic of it. You never know until you ask. And so we just reach out. When we figure out how to get in touch with them, we just reach out, and then we're persistent. Manlee's much better at it than I am. Me, it's taking me some learning to be like, to keep asking. Cause once somebody tells me no, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, well, it's a no. But that's not the way it works. You got to keep asking, because when you keep asking, magic happens. And then eventually that's no is going to turn into a yes.
That's true. That's definitely true. And so right now how many shows do you do a week?
5, Monday through Friday.
That's super busy, April.
Yeah, I think we've surpassed 130 episodes.
That's excellent.
Yeah, we've been running over 7 months now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. And I love being on your show. The questions that you asked me, it's just really easy flowing. I felt really comfortable with you, and I can see, I've watched your other shows on YouTube, and it's really incredible. Everybody feels the same way. I could feel the like energy involved there. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
The connections that you're making and that you're continuing to make.
Thank you. I tell my guests, and my guests that I have on the show are really, that's the people that I cater to. That's basically my client. Right. And everything that I do is to really bring them the greatest highlight and exposure that I can offer. And so I put a lot of intention in creating this beautiful flyer for them, making sure that their biography is pushed out, making sure that the title and the description really aligns with the passion that they're wanting to put out into the world. And the people that I interview, it's just a great conversation between me and my guests. It's not scripted. I very, very rarely ask questions or go off a set of questions. I mean, sometimes my guests will give me a few questions to kind of go with, but for the most part, it's just a great conversation between me and my guests, between you and I.
I love it. Absolutely love it. What is something you want the world to know?
Oh, that's a question that you're the most powerful thing. You're more powerful than you could ever imagine. And I know that to be true because I've seen magic and miracles happen. And I would definitely consider myself to be one. So because of that, that's the message. And I know that that's not really clear. And it's kind of like, well, how and what do you mean? But it's something that you can't describe. It's something that it's in the realm of that which we cannot see, but you can feel it.
Yes.
You can feel the magic. And it's kind of like, this is one of the easiest examples, right? But when you rub your hands together and you just create the friction and then you pull them apart and you feel that energy force field within them and between that, that's what we are. We're this force that can't be reckoned with.
Very beautiful. And what's something that you can tell people that have lupus, being a survivor yourself?
Oh, just to maintain positivity. The thing about lupus is it shows up in so many different ways, and it has a lot to do with inflammation. And so it's going to show up different for every single lupus patient and in a lot of different ways. But I would say definitely, like we spoke on earlier, listen to your body and just go quiet. Learn how to lower the heart rate because that is a key factor on maintaining those stress levels. Because when we talk about stress, and again, going back to those emotions, and once you start learning more and more about how to regulate those emotions, then you're going to live a much healthier life. I also actually, I'd like to mention, because I think this is an important key too, because we're energetic beings and you think of ourselves as like a battery, we have to recharge, right?
Right.
Well, the earth is the largest battery that we have, right?
Definitely.
So if you think of us like a cell phone and that you need to like redock, that's how we humans do it, is by touching the earth. And that's how we redock. And there is an immense amount of power in that, of healing in that. And so I invite people 20 minutes a day, put your feet on the ground, bare feet on the grass.
Definitely grounding.
Yeah.
And kids know this stuff. They're running around barefoot all the time. They know how to recharge. We need to go back to our inner child.
100%.
April Chavez, everybody here on A Little Less Fear podcast, her incredible podcast, The Wellness Driven Show. Where can people tune in to The Wellness Driven Show?
Oh, we're across numerous platforms. So consider the podcast area. So whatever your favorite place to listen to a podcast, we are Apple, Spotify, all of those things. We also partner with Evergreen Podcasts. So when you find us on Evergreen Podcasts, then you get to pick and choose from whatever is your favorite there. Also, the YouTube channel is something that we push the most because the show, just like this, it's this beautiful visual piece, right? And we really highlight that. And I like to talk about that the most. So our YouTube channel is really another area that I truly invite people to investigate, because you get to have that visual piece too. And that's going to be at the Wellness Driven Life Show at youtube.com or what have you. But our handle is always the Wellness Driven Life Show.
And how can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners find you if they need to get a hold of you?
Oh, that's a great question. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn.
Excellent.
So April Chavez on LinkedIn, and also through my website. I think I have an area there where if you want to connect with me and send me an email, you can do so.
April Chavez, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing your love, light, your wisdom, and all of your incredible energy, and for blessing me with your presence. I really appreciate our connection.
100%. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to keeping in touch.